Sunday, August 14th, 2022. Everybody, we are officially into week 2 of the Green Bay Packers preseason slate. They will have practice this week against the New Orleans Saints, joint practices on Tuesday and Wednesday before going into a game Friday night. Their only home game at Lambeau Field against the New Orleans Saints, as I just mentioned. Hi, everybody. I'm your host. I am Jacob Westendorf, pinch hitting one more time for Andy Herman before giving way to Andy again as we get through week 2 here. So looking forward to that. Obviously, the Packers played Friday night against the San Francisco 49ers. They lost 28-21. Final score doesn't matter. What we saw on the field certainly does. There are a lot of things that we were able to get to. I was with Alex Strofe last night talking about the Packers game, what we saw, and a lot of that focus was on Jordan Love, understandably so. That's the biggest storyline. Anytime he's going to step onto the field as somebody that could potentially be the Packers quarterback of the future, and obviously far and away the most controversial pick the Packers have had at that position in their draft class since Aaron Rodgers. Like, honestly, I have no idea who that might be, but obviously a polarizing pick, and I don't want to rehash all of that, but it was easy to get lost in some of that stuff last night. So I wanted to talk about some of the guys who I thought acquitted themselves pretty well after their first bit of preseason action in their game against the San Francisco 49ers. So the first one, and the guy, we touched on him a little bit last night, but I do want to give him his shine, especially because on this platform, on Game on Wisconsin, on radio spots that I've done, I've been very critical of Amari Rogers and just how poor he played as a rookie. Like, there just wasn't a whole lot that went in his favor as a rookie. He struggled as a punt returner. He struggled as a kickoff returner and kind of got lost in the shuffle on offense and didn't do a whole lot when he was on the field as an offensive player. Last night, not the case. He looks slimmer. He looks trimmer. He's talked about how he's lost some weight, and it certainly looks like he has as well. He looks quicker off the screen. He was never the most explosive player at Clemson, but he looks more explosive now than he did last year. He popped a big kickoff return, which is something the Packers just didn't do last year. He's in a competition for that spot. And I said it last night, right now, if Amari Rogers and Rico Gafford are the only ones competing for that spot, which they may not be, Christian Watson, if he comes off the pup, he's somebody that was a kickoff returner in college. But as of right now, if the season starts tomorrow, Amari Rogers is your kickoff returner, and he earned that job. The punt return job, I think, is also his to lose as of right now. That can obviously change. Didn't look the most comfortable catching the punt, but made a difficult adjustment and a catch on the punt that he was trying to field last night. So positives for Amari Rogers, and that's certainly something on a Packers offense and special teams unit that are both searching for answers as we go through this offseason, the very end of this offseason, getting into the regular season. The Packers need to be better in the return game. I made the joke the other night. I don't feel like they've been good in the return game since Allen Rossum. Like, I mean, I'm joking, but honestly, it feels like it's been since forever. And on the offensive side of the ball, we've talked about the receivers and their skill position group a bunch. I'm not telling you guys anything that you don't already know. So I wanted to give Amari Rogers his flowers. I also wanted that for you guys to get an opportunity to tell you that I am one of the people that will admit when I am wrong about something. And I was very skeptical about Amari Rogers and said it was possible, or at least I thought it was at least in the realm of possibility that he could get cut after this preseason. I don't think that's possible any longer. I know that feels like a sweeping conclusion after one game, but he just looks like a completely different player. Wes Hodkiewicz of Packers.com has said he's had a very solid camp. I think you put all those things together and you could pretty much firmly put him on the roster in an ink pen if you would like to do that. Some other guys that I thought played well after I watched the game again. They had the broadcast on NFL Network this morning before the Bears game started today. And I watched it again in some slow motion type stuff a little bit later on NFL Plus. It's not called Game Pass anymore, but the interior offensive line. And that's something that I was very concerned about. I've talked about that a lot. John Runyon Jr. and Josh Myers are guys that we feel like we know a little bit about, but Myers hasn't played a lot of football for the Packers, was injured for a lot of last season. And Runyon lost his starting job last year, but has been rock solid for the most part when he's been available and on the field. So I felt like, maybe we don't know that. And Jake Hansen is one of the most polarizing starters that the Packers have right now. And I'm not saying that he reminded me of TJ Lang or, when Josh Sitton played over there or anything like that. But I don't think he was actively bad either. And I feel like that was a good thing. He looks better as a center. I think that's fair, which is, he was a center in college. Like he is a center. Asking him to play right guard is asking him to do something he hasn't typically done. But right now, he looks like the leader in the clubhouse to be the right guard. And that, some of this obviously depends on the uncertainty. The Packers have two very large question marks on their offensive line right now with David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins and when they might be available. Brian Gutekunst says that is a when and not an if. Forgive me if I'm going to be skeptical on the David Bakhtiari portion of those things and just cautiously optimistic on Elton Jenkins, just because we saw last year how unpredictable some of those injuries can be. And we just have such limited information on what the injury actually was, how the recovery went, just all that stuff. Everything that we've gone through with the David Bakhtiari situation, everything Bakhtiari's gone through with that situation. And I feel for him. He said last night he's had 3 surgeries, and it was a more serious injury than what he thought. And he wants to be back on the field. If you question that, then I think you should reevaluate your thoughts and your values, quite frankly, if you don't think David Bakhtiari wants to play, or if you think it's a lack of toughness as to why he's not on the field. 3 surgeries is tough. It's a tough injury that he's been able to get through. At Elton Jenkins, they say looks really good. So I'll just be interested to see if and when those guys get back on the field. But those are 3 guys right now that look like they're going to start, with Yosh Nijman playing left tackle and Royce Newman playing right tackle. And I didn't see Zach Tom played well, I thought, but he hasn't displaced Newman or Nijman as a right tackle. He's not playing guard. He's not playing center. So the Packers it looks like that first group is going to be the starting offensive line. Now, last year they had that first group play that first preseason game against the Texans, and then they changed out who their starting guards were. So maybe that's something they'll do. I'll be interested to see how they do that Tuesday when they line up against New Orleans. It's the next time we have public practice. I believe that I would assume they're practicing on Monday, and we might get some reports and tweets out from the beat writers and stuff like that, but I don't know. But I thought those 3 guys played well. I was really impressed with Hansen and Myers specifically. There was a screen pass to Tyler Goodson where those guys moved really well. And that's something the Packers have struggled with, especially in, years past where they had maybe not the most recent years past, but guys like Byron Bell and Jari Evans at the end of his career and Lane Taylor. Nothing against Lane, but he's just those guys aren't elite movers like some of these other dudes are. Josh Myers, his screen blocking, that was the first thing ever that jumped off the page for him as an NFL player. For me last year when they played the Texans, they had the touchdown to Kylan Hill, and I thought his ability to move in space jumped off the page on that particular play. If you're a junkie and want to go back and watch Josh Myers play preseason football, feel free to do so. But otherwise, you can just take my word for it on that. But I thought the interior of the offensive line was good. For the most part, Jordan Love had abilities to step up into the pocket. I didn't think he was under that much pressure. They picked up some of the pressures that the 49ers sent. Now, again, will it be different week 1 against Minnesota where, you got Zadarius Smith, we know him pretty well, and Danielle Hunter, they also know him pretty well on the other side of the ball, and sending real pressures and real stunts and some of the stuff that the Vikings are going to be able to do, certainly. But I thought they acquitted themselves very well last night. The other guys were the running backs, and I know we kind of touched on them a little bit last night as well, but I wanted to just go over again because that Matt LaFleur said it since he got here. I need 3 guys that are capable of carrying the football. And I think that was part of, not the entire reason, but part of the reason they drafted A.J. Dillon as high as they did a couple of years ago, because they had Aaron Jones, they had Jamal Williams, my former co-host, I guess. Jamal, one of my favorite players in all of football. Wish him well in Detroit. I hope he runs for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Packers, and that they lose both of those games very handily, just because I love Jamal that much. That the Lions lose those games, obviously, just because I love Jamal Williams, and I think he's a guy that I will always wish could be back in Green Bay, and unfortunately, I don't. Obviously the Packers have moved on. But anyways, the reason I'm getting at that is he said he wants 3 guys that can carry the ball. Okay. Well, then they went and got that 3rd guy, and obviously Jamal Williams left. They drafted Kylan Hill. They've kept around Patrick Taylor, who to me last night was behind guys like Tyler Goodson and BJ Baylor. And then you add in that Kylan Hill could be back sooner or later. Who knows? But I think you got to feel pretty good about Green Bay's stable of running backs that they have at this point. Dexter Williams had a couple of nice runs last night. He's somebody that's familiar with the system. He's been here before. Maybe I don't think he's going to crack the roster, but is that a guy that you can stash again on the practice squad and just know, like, hey, if injuries strike, this guy knows the system and kind of knows what he's doing a little bit? Maybe. That's certainly something that Green Bay could try and do. But I thought all of those guys, I thought they ran the ball well. I thought they did well catching the ball when they were given opportunities to do so. I'm excited to see what they do this week against the Packers. As far as tests go, if they could get anything out of these games, the 49ers defense is probably going to be one of the best in the NFL. This is barring health. The same is true for New Orleans and Dennis Allen's group. That's something that I think Green Bay can benefit from, is just seeing some of these guys. And then Kansas City's defense, Steve Spagnuolo, he gave them fits last year with Jordan Love under center. So maybe that's something that they're going to be able to do as well. Just kind of get some things out of that. Again, very vanilla, usually in the preseason, but maybe the Packers can get something with facing some of these more talented groups in the preseason instead of some nondescript groups, maybe like they did a season ago, specifically the New York Jets and the Houston Texans, honestly. So that's just kind of my takeaway there. But I thought all three of those backs good. On the defensive side of the ball, I touched on TJ Slayton last night. I'm just really excited for that defensive line's potential this year. 5 guys, honestly. Lowry, Reed, Clark, Wyatt, and Slayton. All guys I think you can be relatively excited about going into this season, where it's been a position where in years past you just haven't. You've kind of been hoping that the other guy next to Kenny Clark just isn't actively bad. And I just don't think that's going to be the case. Again, barring health. Everything about this is, barring relative health at these positions, at any position really, for the Packers. But I thought those guys, I think that group can be very solid. And even some of those later guys, like Jack Heflin, I thought looked better. And he might be a guy that Green Bay can try and stash on the practice squad again. Maybe he gets onto another roster. It's just going to be tough for anybody outside of those 5 guys to crack the roster, unless Green Bay is going to keep 6 guys, which maybe, I don't know. I think they could do that. They've typically kept 5, and who knows though, maybe this year's a different year with the way they want to play defense and everything like that as well. Sean Davis was another guy as far as the safeties go. A relatively nondescript game for the safety. Like, they didn't have any big plays, they didn't have any picks. They gave up. Dallin Levitt gave up a big play, but he was brought in my opinion, to be a special teams player. And if he has to be asked to play defense, I don't think that's a good thing, obviously. But I thought Sean Davis of the group looked the best right now. He's talented, and I don't make the rules, but if a player has, as a defensive back, if they have dreadlocks, they're automatically a better player. That's just, again, Mike McKenzie, Al Harris, it just looks so much cooler if they've got that flow going on behind the helmet. I don't make the rules. Kingsley Anabar is the other guy, had a couple of pressures. And I thought it was interesting. Bill Huber noted today that he hasn't done anything in camp. And asking, him to pick that up off of that is interesting to me, at least. But he hasn't done anything in camp. And then last night he has a sack. He has quite a few pressures. He's able to work through some guys. Maybe he's one of those guys. Gutekunst and LaFleur have talked about it. Rogers has mentioned some things before too about how, when the lights come on, the game players are just different players in games than maybe they are in practice. So maybe that Anabar is one of those guys as well. But I wanted to make note of him as well. Let's turn the page here and go to next week here real quick. Just some guys that I think and some things that I'm watching as the Packers get into these joint practices and, a second preseason game. That's a big deal. As we kind of get through it. I don't know how the Packers are going to treat the preseason game. Matt LaFleur said that Aaron Rodgers would not play, so not a big deal there. But the joint practices, I have found them to be beneficial, and I'm just me. I'm not in the locker rooms, but I always think those are getting a chance to play against another team and your starters actually getting to play in controlled environments where you can kind of dictate how things are going to go and you're not worried, or you got to trust those guys, obviously, that somebody's not going to go rogue and hit the starting quarterback or anything like that. But just things I'm looking to see. Obviously, the Packers starting offense with Aaron Rodgers against a Saints defense that is really talented and a Saints team that I think, frankly, if Tom Brady hadn't come back, I would have thought they were a slam dunk to win the NFC South. I think their roster is very talented. I do have some questions about them not having Sean Payton anymore, obviously, but I think that is a very talented roster and a very good defense that gave the Packers fits last year. I mean, that is a Packers offense that looked locked, loaded, and primed to just be like nuke the league again, and they didn't. They scored 3 points, and I know that looked like an outlier by the end of the year, but that Saints defense has given Tom Brady fits. I just want to see how all of that goes. Otherwise, what I want to see, Jordan Love from week 1 to week 2. Can you stack on the good? Can you learn from the bad? Because there was plenty of both, I thought, like we mentioned last night, in his start against San Francisco. So can you make more plays like you did to Romeo Doubs? Can you make more plays within the offense where you see it and let it rip? Can you avoid some of the bad decisions that lead to maybe not turnovers, but turnover-worthy type of plays? Can you avoid that kind of stuff? Because those are the things that he needs to build on, and those are the things that we didn't get a chance to see that last year because Love went from week 1, got injured, sat, and then eventually played that final preseason game last year. But you didn't get to see him kind of grow that way through everything and play 3 consecutive weeks like you're going to be able to see, hopefully, barring health, this season, that the Packers will be able to do something like that. So I'm certainly looking forward to Jordan Love and his performance on that as well. The other thing, as far as the starters go, Quay Walker being locked up with Alvin Kamara. Kamara is one of the best players, obviously, and the Saints offense kind of in general, just their ability to create mismatches and some of the stuff that they do. But getting Quay Walker to kind of see an offense a little more complicated. Can he do some things? He played 12 snaps last night. That tells me that they wanted him to play, but not too much to where they kind of overexpose him in a preseason game because they think he's going to be a key contributor to this team in 2022, which that matters. And you're going to run into teams that, want to get their running backs matched up on these linebackers that can't run and cover and do some of the things like maybe some defensive backs do. And what the Packers have typically done, in the past is get guys like Henry Black, Chandon Sullivan a few years ago to a lesser degree, just those, Raven Green type players. That's Quay Walker now. And getting him against a running back, I think, is going to be something that the Packers can find their way to get maybe just some better mismatches against run and pass out on the field. But I want to see how he does against those guys. The other thing, Devonte Wyatt, it was a bummer that he wasn't able to suit up last night against the 49ers. So I want to see him on the field and just see what kind of juice he can bring. Chris Sims recently said, I guess, that he has Warren Sapp-like potential. I don't know about that, but another good interior pass rusher for the Packers. You can never have too many of those. So definitely want to see what that looks like, especially against, again, a good Saints offensive line. This is a Saints roster that's really good. Their question mark is the quarterback, Jameis Winston. And Winston had the Saints at 5-2 before he got injured last year, and they look like a team that could potentially be a Super Bowl contender again. Obviously, Sean Payton, they have questions of their own. Hopefully, Trevor Penning's able to avoid getting into fights for the team. But I'm out of time. I appreciate you guys sitting with me the last couple of days. Andy will be back tomorrow, so thank you, Lucky Stars. For that, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Westorf. You can follow the show at Pack-A-Day Podcast. The Packers will play the Saints on Friday this week at Lambeau Field. Enjoy that. If you're coming to practice Wednesday, let me know. Come say hi. I'll be happy to say what's up to you guys on that front. So until then, we'll see you next time.